Whatever avenue you are on, it's not cold and rainy. It's sunshiny. Yeah, sure, it's the 1st of August. That's okay. But the big thing for me is not the day on the calendar, just the fact that it's what does this mean? Like 40 days until the Steelers open in Cincinnati? Is that right? Am I doing that right? Yeah, because they open on the 11th.
The math is close, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I am not a mathematician, as you found out on the preview the other night. If you missed that show with Dave Schofield and one Jefferson Hartman, I did not do as well in math as I thought I would. But this is not a math show. This is a Stiller show, and we are so glad to be with you. It is the Hangover, and we're hungover from, the start of camp, which is very special. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis, the host of the Hangover. I've got some great co-hosts that actually keep me in line and keep me on this network. If it's not for these guys, I'd be in the cheese line somewhere. Tony Defeo, what is going on?
I am doing fantastic. It's the first day of pads, so we're getting closer and closer. Like you said, 40 days away, and we've already had so much interesting news since last Wednesday. So I can't wait to hear what more tidbits we get to find out in the next couple weeks.
Shannon White, what is lighting your black and gold fire right now?
No, like Tony said, first day of pads and a lot of information and news coming out of camp today. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. And there's so much over the last week and so much to talk about. And first of all, if you want to listen to people talk about the Steelers, I don't think there's anybody better than the group here at BTSC. Come in the regular season, we're going to have 22 original shows every single week with the return of the Mike Tomlin press conference wrap-ups, whether it be a post-game press conference or that Tuesday press conference, whether it's going to be the big thing, the return of what becomes our signature show in season. It's the post-game show. And there's going to be more levels to the post-game show. So instead of hearing an exhausted trio of Jeff, Dave, and myself, you're going to have our West Coast crew. We're going to have our Westies, our Westie besties coming in. What Ian's talking about crew are going to be doing that show, doing the post game after a primetime matchup so we can get to bed before 4 a.m. and go to our regular jobs as well. So we're excited about that. But here's the thing. Shannon alluded to the fact that camp, we're hearing more and more every single day. There's so much to get excited about. There's little things to get concerned about. And we're going to talk about that. And that's mostly every time somebody comes on Twitter. And there's so much on Twitter right now because there's people there and saying that, hey, so-and-so limped off. And we had somebody sitting on a cooler with John Norwig, the trainer, today. And it scared the bejeebers out of a lot of people. It might be minor, but it's still happening. And that was Najee Harris. So it seems like everything's okay, but we find out every single thing that happens. I'm surprised we don't have the menus of what they're eating and what color Gatorade they're drinking and who's texting who. I mean, we know so much, and it's great to know so much. But if you want to find out what's going on, BTSC is the place to be. Behind the steel curtain, absolutely. If you love to read about the Steelers, then you're reading great stuff from Shannon White and Tony Defeo and Jeff Hartman and the likes of Dave Schofield. Breaking news, those guys are bursting it out. Then you've got guys that you have never heard before. You've never read before. Now you're hearing from them on the editorial side. Daniel J. is going to be writing. Also, my man, Kevin Tate, he's writing now too. So great, just really good stuff from them. They are also on the podcast side as well. Jeffrey Benedict, you hear from him, you hear from KT Smith. You're going to hear from those guys on the podcast side, as well as the What Ian's Talking About crew, as well as the three of us, as well as Touchdown Under. Don't forget about the Aussies. Yes, it is. I said it right, boys. Aussies. So, really good. So Dave likes to call it the one-stop shop, and I keep on correcting him. I keep on saying it's the non-stop shop, because anytime you want Steelers stuff, in fact, you could go back in time and listen to stuff you missed. It's all there. Wherever you download your favorite podcast, do it. So who's downloading those favorite podcasts? I don't know, because I'm seeing right now old favorites and new favorites that are in our live chat. Brian Brown's here, Jared Devil, John C., Claude Bishop, my man, Kathy Forward. A name I was wondering, Stacy Lynn's here. Haven't seen Stacy on Facebook in a while. Good to see her. I mentioned John C., but Sean Manahan. So there are so many familiar names. We're glad to see you. We want to see names that we don't know, too. When I said we don't know who's downloading the shows, because here's the thing. You might be downloading the show on Wednesday in the privacy of your car, and I can't see it. But I thank you, because you're just as important as the people watching live and mentioning us in the comment section. So you're very important to us, too. We cannot do these shows with each and every eye and ear, the sets of them that are checking us out. So we appreciate it. Now, let's do it. We got to talk about training camp. And training camp, man, I was talking last week. It was like Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. We were on for what I consider Christmas Eve, because it's right before training camp opens. And it feels so good when training camp opens, because it's a new day. And then you start getting some reports in. And some of those reports, like I said before, you're really excited about, but there's the opposite. It's the opposite, the people that are getting victimized from the ones that you're celebrating, because offenses are taking on defenses. So, gentlemen, I'm going to start with you, Shannon. What stands out as something exciting and a concern all at the same time to you?
Well, just based on last week, the most exciting news was George Pickens just dominating. There was a lot of talk about the quarterbacks, who looked good and who didn't. But again, without pads and, the first week of camp. So I think it was a little bit of overreaction. People was panicking that Kenny Pickett wasn't getting enough reps. But then today he ran with the second team, So again, that's part of the competition. And Tomlin, and they have a plan. But Pickens is he's always making some kind of spectacular catch. He makes all the routine ones too, but he really is shining in the diving catches, the contested catches, and he brings something that they just didn't have last year. And then when you include Calvin Austin III in that speed, and they both had big days today, based on what I've read, that's got to be exciting.
Absolutely, it is. So I'm feeling good about that. Tony, is that your excitement, or is there something else?
Well, I can't deny that I'm very excited about George Pickens. I mean, you heard so much about how this guy may have been underdrafted, and the only reason why he lasted till the second round was because of the knee injury. Mm-hmm. And if he was 100% healthy, then he would have been the first receiver picked. And it's a small sample size so far, but you're seeing evidence of that right now. The way he's dominated at training camp, and the athleticism, the acrobatic catches. I couldn't be more excited about him right now. As far as the concerns, you asked that too, right? What am I concerned about? Probably, and it's a small sample size, and it's probably the struggles of the first team offense behind Mr. Trubisky. But then again, like Jeffrey Benedict pointed out the other day on Sunday, they're going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL. They're going up against T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward, and you're not going to always look good against those guys. So that's my only concern so far, because I think they're counting on Trubisky being the starter, but he's not going to face defenses at that level week in and week out. So hopefully he can figure things out. But it's not a major concern at this point. I think my excitement for Pickens is way higher than my concern about Trubisky in the first team offense, because it's so early.
Absolutely. That's something that is really important. We are going to talk about the quarterbacks as well as the receivers. And the receivers are Shannon mentioned George Pickens. And to me, George Pickens, I'm almost cautious now about George Pickens. And the reason I am is because we have been on this bandwagon like crazy since the very start of his existence here in Pittsburgh, which was draft day. And there was a lot of excitement when you realized who he was. And you found out that, okay, they value him more over Skye Moore, which was Shannon's guy. And I'm hearing great reports about Skye Moore. But when I hear reports of both Austin 3 and George Pickens, I think that's a little bit better than just one Skye Moore. Mm-hmm. If they're both who they're being hyped to be. So what I'm asking here, and what I'm really noticing here, is when you think about how well these guys are playing, do we stop and think that, okay, who are they doing it against? Tony just mentioned that the defense is really, is making the quarterback struggle right now because they're facing great defense. But for all these great plays we hear about, and we heard about Anthony Miller making one today, we heard about Pickens making another one today, we heard about that 61-yard slant early last week from Calvin Austin III. Claypool looks absolutely amazing from what they're saying as well. So we're hearing all these stories about all these players, but then you find out who the guy that was covering them. One time you hear it's Levi Wallace. The other time you hear it's Cam Sutton. Today you heard that. Then you hear it's Akello Witherspoon today. Is that concern for you guys, or is that just us not realizing that, hey, they're working rust out?
Mm-hmm. Want me to go?
Yes, I will. Go ahead.
I think it's not a major concern. Again, like Jeffrey pointed out on Sunday, these guys up until Monday, they didn't have to worry about trying to deal with press coverage at the line of scrimmage, physicality, because they weren't wearing pads. But even once you get to that point where the hitting is real, the hitting's live, the quarterbacks, they don't get hit. So that's even more time that these corners have to cover these guys downfield. So I'm not exactly worried just yet, because we know the Steelers' defense is fueled by the pass rush. It has been since the second half of 2016. So that element of the game, I'm confident it's going to be alive and well once the season starts, because it why wouldn't it be? It's been so consistent for 5.5 years. So I'm not that worried about that. As I've said before, and other people have said, receivers, especially talented receivers, should dominate in these kind of settings, especially when the pads aren't on like they weren't for the first 4 days of camp. So I'm not that concerned about it at this point.
Well, that's great. Now I'm going to swerve a little bit because we do have possible breaking news, and it's good. It's good.
Okay.
BTSC is currently looking for a second source to make sure that this is something that is official. But there are reports right now that the Steelers have signed Chris Boswell to a 4-year deal. And that's just coming through. I don't know if that is Tony. Tony, that was he was all excited, and now he just he sighed. Is that? I thought it was going to be for joy.
I thought it was going to be a left tackle. I was going to be a left tackle to replace Dan Moore, because he sucks. All right, go ahead.
No, I love it. I know you know that. I know you know that. I was like, what?
It's great news. If true, it's great news.
Mm-hmm. So right now, look, I'm our guys, Dave Schofield, Jeremy Betts, Jeff Hartman, they're looking into this, but that just came out. That's hitting Twitter right now. So I'm not going to say it's gospel, because we're still looking for a true source, and if that's true, that's fantastic. But let's treat it as a rumor for the rest of this show, or until that I find that we're publishing it. So I think, but it's something I did want to go ahead and bring up, that we knew this was going to happen. And when we say we knew it, it's just exactly what they were going to try to do. We knew he was the next priority. So that leads me to this. Who's the next priority? And I think we're not sure on who the next priority is. And it could be somebody that's holding in. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I want to wrap up what we were talking about before. And we were talking about George Pickens. We're talking about the receivers and the secondary. And I don't know what to really think yet. I heard what Tony said. I heard what Shannon had to say about it. I just don't know. Somebody mentioned in the live chat, and I thought it was very interesting, and I kind of lost it. It was Britzberg Owen said, bad Pickens is a top receiver. He'd make Jalen Ramsey struggle. So are we a little too early on the Pickens train, on the hype train? Is this too much hype for a guy that has not played even a preseason game yet? Shannon?
Yeah, I mean that's the fun of the preseason. That's the fun of training camp, is to get a little bit of hyperbole going and hyping these guys up a little bit. But the bottom line is, you could come to camp and go through the motions and we don't hear anything. But if you're making the kind of plays that Pickens has been making, people are going to talk. And there's guys there that we follow each day, beat reporters, and they're putting this stuff out on Twitter. And every time you turn around, Pickens did this and Pickens did that. And then we can see the clips. And the guy's got, incredible athleticism, body control, leaping ability, and he's got good hands.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's doing this stuff. So even though last week it was without pads, and today at least with pads on, but it's legit. I mean, if he could do it against the Steelers defense, we talked about the cornerbacks and should we be concerned? Last week, Levi Wallace missed 2 practices with some kind of illness. He might have had the flu. I don't know. They had Arthur Millette out there, and he even lined up outside a few times. They had undrafted free agent Chris Steele. They had I can't say his last name right. Palins, but he's an undrafted rookie. So a lot of that, that might have been why the secondary struggled, is because you got all this talent, draftable talent on the offense and receiver, and then you have all these undrafted guys that was playing a lot in the secondary last week. So some of the action happened against Witherspoon, and of course Wallace wasn't in there, and against Sutton, but a lot of it was against James Pierre and Justin Lane, who are going to be fighting for a spot this year, and some of the undrafted guys. So it's a little bit of both. There's no doubt that the Steelers wide receiver core has tons of talent, much improved from last year. But the defense is not only the guys in there, a lot of them are inexperienced, but they're new to that defense. All the rest of the defense is pretty much back and has been strengthened, but the secondary is still pretty new. So I don't think there's no reason to be concerned yet.
Tony, let me ask you this. Here's the thing about George Pickens. I think he could have the world at his feet. I really think this guy could be absolutely amazing. But very rarely have we seen a rookie wide receiver come in and just dominate and become the WR1 of a team. Now, we saw it last year with Jamar Chase. Real deal. He also had a little bit of a cheat code because he was catching balls from Joe Burrow for a long, long time. So those guys were those guys were on the same page. Now, not always does that work. We saw that with Mason Rudolph and James Washington. We've seen that. I mean, that doesn't always mean that a quarterback and his wide receiver hooking up in the pros is going to be good, but we saw exactly what he did. And I don't think there's any turning back for Jamar Chase. I think he's a superstar. I really do. And then of course we can go back to a guy like Randy Moss. I mean, nobody is going to go ahead and nobody's going to go ahead and say that guy wasn't exciting back in 1998. Let me just break in. We're getting it from Adam Schefter now. So we are going to, I feel like a political analyst. So we're going to call this. we're going to call the state of Pittsburgh, which isn't a state. We're going to call Pittsburgh
for Chris Boswell.
For Chris Boswell. Chris Boswell is the winner of Pittsburgh. Adam Schefter saying that the Steelers are giving kicker Chris Boswell a new 4-year, $20 million extension that includes $12.5 million guaranteed. His agent Jeff Nally confirmed Monday. The 4-year extension ties Boswell with Justin Tucker as the highest paid kickers in NFL history. Guys, with the exception of 2018 when the man was beat up and he was battling something, he has been absolutely incredible. One of the best kickers of all time. And it's really funny because I've never seen a guy, you see guys burst on the scene and hitting a lot of 50s. Now you see him 6 years in, and now he's money from 50 plus.
Yeah,
it's absolutely amazing. So the Boz thing's true. I don't think $5 million a year for a guy like Tucker or a guy like Boswell, who's feels like automatic, is anything to worry about. Do you, Shannon?
No, I'm thrilled. He's money. In the games, he's won them. He comes through, and so I think it's a very wise investment. And honestly, I think he's the best kicker in Steelers history. I've always said it was coming down to him or Gary Anderson, but Gary didn't have that range that Boswell has developed. So, considering how clutch he is too, I think they were really smart signing the best kicker in franchise history.
I want to bring this up because I actually think this is I was going to mention this, and there's a laughing emoji next to it. But Mark Mazzaro's, and this is very true. Last time we gave Boz a contract, he went into the toilet. But the thing about that, he was hurt. I mean, but he would not blame it on anything. He would not blame it on an injury. But I mean, from reports coming out of Pittsburgh, he was injured, but the guy was just saying, "I'm off." That's what he's saying. I don't think it was the yips. And if you guys watch Ted Lasso and I say that word, you would have been like, "Whoa, you don't say the yips. You never say the yip." And if you're not watching Ted Lasso, watch Ted Lasso, by the way. But it's that was one season that just, and he was still averaging about 90%. I think it was like that. So his average went down. But if you look at some of the great kickers in Pittsburgh Steelers history and the guys in the 80s and 90s, they weren't getting the percentages that these guys are getting now. So I mean, Chris Boswell to me is when I did Digit Dynasty, he's the greatest number 9 in Steelers history. Was there a lot of great number 9s? No, but he is absolutely the greatest. And I think he will actually, I'm going to go ahead and not have a problem saying this. And Tony, I know Tony and I share our love of the 80s Steelers. I know Shannon does too, but we've done this so much. Tony and I have done this together so much on some different shows, especially when we were doing the retro show. Gary Anderson was not automatic. He is the greatest kicker in Steeler history, but I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that he was better than a lot of guys in front of him. And then, I mean, he was the best to come around, but then he was also, I mean, it was a different time, but his averages were around 80, 85, and he was a Pro Bowl kicker at times. But I just don't think Gary Anderson is the player. And I love Gary Anderson. Met him one of the best days of my radio life when I got to interview him back in 1994. But that was a great day. But Gary Anderson, he missed some kicks. Remember that great Denver playoff game in 1984, one of our favorite games? He missed
several,
2 or 3 kicks in that game. He did kick a big one, but I think Chris Boswell will go down in history as the greatest kicker in Pittsburgh Steelers history.
Oh yeah, and as far as Gary Anderson, I mean, he was kind of like the part of the second generation of the soccer style kickers. I think Gary Upremian was that first generation in the 70s. And then Gary and Morton Anderson and those guys, Matt Barr, Chris Barr, all those guys. And then, it's just like any other position, with each generation, they just get better and better. And we're seeing that today with Chris Boswell. He's up there with Justin Tucker, the best in the league. And for my money, he's the best in the league. And as you said, he was always been consistent. And whether he was injured or some people said he had the yips in 2018, I think he was injured. But even if he did have the yips, it just proves that you can have a bad year even as a kicker and recover from that. And if you're patient with them, if you recognize a quality kicker when you see one, you don't panic and get rid of him like they could have that year. You bring him back, and here he is again. He's even better than he's ever been, and his leg is stronger than ever. And he's, when he lines up for 54, 55 yards away, I have the utmost confidence that he's going to make it, even at Heinz Field. And really, he's the first kicker in the history of that stadium, or I guess now it's Acrisure, the first in the history of that stadium that I can say that about. Like, I don't sweat it at all. I firmly believe he's going to make it. So he's worth every penny. He's dug them out of so many jams in the last 4 or 5 years. And with the offense, perhaps being a question mark for the next year or two, you don't know. He's gonna be integral to their success moving forward.
Yes, absolutely he is. And, Shannon, I wanted to get your opinion on Mr. Gary Anderson, because I still think he's one of my favorite all-time Steelers, and he's phenomenal. But I just don't think that he compares right now to that of Chris Boswell. So I'd like you to weigh in on this.
Yeah, like I said, I was a big Gary Anderson fan. And, remember Gorilla, goodness, a little over 50% some seasons, missed half of them in the Super Bowl. I mean, I just thought that, if a kicker made 1 out of 2 growing up, that was okay.
Right.
And then I started seeing guys like, Murphy and some of these guys, and for the other teams, and I'm like, well, you can make them, even though we couldn't. And then you had Chris Barr and Matt Barnall, those guys, if it was past 45, no, they ain't going, don't try it. But Gary was that first guy, the great kicker in Steeler history. And so I was a huge fan of the guy, a really good individual. But Boswell's he's got everything on him. He's clutch. He's got the stronger leg. He can put it in the end zone for touchbacks on kickoffs. I just think that Boswell's like I said, the best kicker in Steelers history.
And you know what? I know we've got Ravens hate. I have no hate whatsoever for Justin Tucker. I really don't.
I have fear.
I hate the fact that the man wears purple. But and it's a little known fact, but Tucker talks about this, that he was contacted by both teams and he seriously considered going to the Steelers.
Wow.
But he they still had Sweezum at the time though, and it was just a better fit for him to go to Baltimore, and he went in there and he seized the day. And I get really, in fact, I get so excited when he misses that rare kick because it just doesn't happen. But I figured out how to make him miss kicks. I pick him up for every one of my fantasy teams now. Go ahead, Shannon.
But here's the thing: you've got Tucker, who I will admit is the best kicker in the NFL, and I think Boswell is right there with him now. Because he improved his range, like we've talked about. But there's a big difference in the two players. Boswell is very humble, and Tucker is very cocky. I mean, so when he does miss, you just eat that up because, he's just up there celebrating and look how great I am. And he is, but he lets you know it in interviews and on the field. So when he misses, it brings a lot of joy to my heart.
Doesn't he play the tuba or something, or the cello, or he plays like classical music or something?
Go
ahead, Tony.
Sorry. Oh no, I just want to share one little anecdote about my how much I respect Justin Tucker. Like Shannon says, I fear him. That game 3 years ago when Duck came in for Mason when he got knocked out and it went into overtime and Marlon Humphrey knocked the ball out of Juju's hand and they caused a fumble. It was like the 45-yard line. I was over my uncle's and I was in a bad mood. I fell a few days earlier, like suffered a concussion and like I was in a bad mood. So I said, that's it. This game's over. I'm going home. It was at the 45-yard line. I knew he was going to make that. They were going to get just close enough for him to make it. They only needed 5 yards at that point. And sure enough, they kicked the game. He kicked the field goal and they won. So that's how much I respect Justin Tucker, even though he's not one of my favorites because he's a Raven, but I still respect and fear him.
No, I mean, I know to hate him on game day, but really know what I like about him. So T-Bar's coming in with this. A few people are coming in with this, and I just looked it up, and you guys beat me to it because Tony was talking, so I couldn't get in. But Terry Bittinger said it. Also, Jared Evil said it. Yeah, he's an opera singer, which is amazing. So he's an opera singer. Do you know that we have somebody here, and it's not me. Do you know we have a classically trained singer here at BTSC?
Yes.
Okay, Tony knows. Shannon, do you know that?
No.
I'll let you guys guess in the live chat who the classically trained singer at BTSC is, and we'll tell you towards the end of the show. Remind me to tell them. But you can go ahead and put in the live chat. You can put your guesses. You might be surprised, or maybe you won't be with this. It is not me. I'm going to tell you that already. Not me. It could be Tony. It could be Shannon. So
it's not me.
with that. Now I want to sit around the fire. Now, I mean, this look. If I hope this isn't offensive, but I want to get a banjo and sit around the fire with Shannon White. I bet you we could be singing the "Thank God I'm a Country Boy" and picking on the fiddle and all this. And why do I mean, I just think that would be a whole lot of fun making mountain pies. So there you go. Wow, some names coming in. Dave, Maddie D, which that's a cross between Maddie P and Maddie D. Marky D. Jeffrey Benedict, a lot of people think. Josh Parker saying Jeffrey Benedict or Jeff Hartman. So yeah, keep on thinking. Yeah, we'll see. Brian Brown says it's got to be Jeff with that hood on his head. Stay of the Steelers saying it's Jefferson Hartman. Gosh, a lot of votes for Jeff coming in. So I'll just go ahead and say, yeah, it's Jefferson Hartman. Jeff Hartman is a classically trained musician and a singer. He's absolutely fantastic. And
he reminds me of Tucker at times.
But he's not cocky. He's not cocky like.
No, he kind of looks like him.
Oh, he looks like him. Yeah, I guess he does.
Well,
T-Bar says, I guarantee Shannon White could sing all of Fishing in the Dark. I don't know what that is. I don't know what Fishing in the Dark is. Is that a country song, Shannon?
I'm not sure either.
What's your favorite campfire? Tony, I cut you off. I'm sorry. Shannon, what's your favorite campfire sing-along song?
I don't do a lot of singing at the campfire, to be honest with you.
Okay, is there something you love to sing along to?
No, I can't sing. I'm not a good singer.
I mean, I'm a horrible singer, but I think it's presence. I think I'll sing in front of audiences because I love presence. I mean, I love play. I mean, performing.
Yeah, I mean, it's I like to have fun and everything, but I'll just it's a wide variety of stuff I might sing.
Do you sing in the shower?
No.
Okay. You don't sing in the shower? I don't want anybody to picture Shannon naked. I'm sorry. But you don't sing in the shower?
No.
Tony, you sing in the shower, right?
Oh, of course. I do it all the time. And I always sound really good. And then it's same with when I'm in the car. But then when I go to karaoke, I sound like crap. So I guess that exposes me. Karaoke exposes my horrible singing voice.
Well, if you guys would have come to my 50th birthday party, which you were both invited to, you would have heard me sing in front of a live band. It was one of my bucket list things. Jeff and Dave saw it live. I sang "Hurt So Good" and I sang "Centerfold." So
I would love to see that.
I'll send you a video. I was wearing a Cobra Kai gi too because it was an '80s party. So Chris May sang "Fishing in the Dark" is Creedence Clearwater Revival. Love some. You gotta like CCR, Shannon.
Yes,
I figured you would.
Yes, I do.
So that's interesting. And Yankees fan is saying Shannon gets a lot of love, and someone called Shannon the Man earlier, but they're mentioning your "Once a Time in Hollywood" framed picture behind you. Is that yours? Is that your son's or your wife's?
My son's. It's my son.
I think it's a great movie. My wife hated
it. It is.
I think it's
he loved it, so we got it because my wife don't like it either, but me and my son do. So
I love Tarantino though, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
well, okay. Sean Manahan is saying no. "Fishing in the Dark" was Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, but I still love me some CCR. I could hear Shannon singing. Have you ever heard? Gosh, the rain. I want to know. So anyways, let's get back into this. So one thing, all this stuff that I did here by getting off track and off subject with the Boswell thing, it's because you guys in the live chat are driving me crazy. I love you, but you're driving me crazy. I didn't bring up Deontay Johnson completely to you. Let me run the show. I got this. So you guys asking, so I will go ahead. We'll talk Deontay Johnson. Oh, and I know you don't like Deontay Johnson. I get it. Everybody knows it. You can go to Russia. You could walk in and say, "Hey, I'm Owen," and you know what they'll say? Oh, oh no, I would never say that. But would go ahead and say, "Oh, it's Owen. We know he doesn't like Deontay Johnson," and we get it. And I understand that everybody has the players that wear them out. I definitely get that too. But what I'm bringing up here, it's sorry about that. It's hard to say what a player is worth and what he's not worth to the team. You know, Deebo Samuel got money today. Then we saw Terry McLaurin get it. DK Metcalf got it over the weekend. And we saw Tyreek Hill got it. You know, all these guys are getting, all these wide receivers are getting the money. And I know. Yes, I did sing at Scout Camp. And I did sing. I did my own version of Country Roads. But so these guys are getting the money. And then you have the hold-in, which I am not a big fan of the hold-in. Now, you could say, hey, hold-in worked for TJ Watt. TJ Watt's not in the situation that Deontay Johnson's in. And it's not that, look, I will never say that a player shouldn't think that he's worth the money that he thinks he's worth. Because guess what? You know, he's a professional. He is worth the money that he thinks he's worth. And somebody put it in the live chat, and I'm going to say it again. Somebody is going to pay him money that he wants.
Right.
Might not be the Steelers. If the Steelers pay him the money that he thinks he deserves, then the Steelers know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. But the Steelers are a different situation. And I'm just going to say about this whole thing that this is very dangerous. A hold-in for TJ Watt was not dangerous. Last year was, when is TJ Watt coming back? Because he had nothing behind him. But I don't know if anybody's quietly noticed, Chase Claypool seems to be a different mature spokesperson for the Steelers. And he seems to be a guy that is ready to grab the mantle. And with DJ holding out, DJ makes it a whole lot harder for the Steelers to pay him. Well, I'm sorry, holding in. Now, he did a lot of work today. He did more work than he has ever. It was just reported. And I mean, ever in camp. He was catching, this is the important thing for me. He was catching balls from quarterbacks. He was also being shadowed by assistant coaches and trainers acting as defensive backs. I'm more concerned about rhythm and timing, quarterback to receiver. I think that's the most important thing. But when you have two stud guys, rookies coming in, turning a lot of heads, you've got a guy like Anthony Miller that's saying, hey, what about me? You've got Chase Claypool ready to turn the corner and wanting to be the man, especially with Juju gone. Then it becomes dangerous. It becomes more dangerous for Deontay Johnson to be not in practice than to the Steelers, because the Steelers could have alternatives. I know I'm going a little bit long on this. The last thing I'm going to say is I think the Steelers would be better with Deontay Johnson in the lineup than him not being in the lineup. I think they'd be better with him in camp than him not being in camp. I think he makes them a better team and helps them be a better team. Can they live without him? Possibly, because they've been a wide receiver factory. But the problem is, right now for this year, DJ can't live without the Steelers for this year unless he forces a trade. And some people are asking about that, but the Steelers don't work that way. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to start asking. Tony Defeo, what would you advise Deontay Johnson to do if you were his agent that did not get the 10%? If you were just
I would advise him to keep doing what he's doing to hold in. I mean, because he's getting his work in, and he has a track record. He has a resume in the league. And as far as the other guys passing him by and making it easier for the Steelers not to pay him, that might be true. But I don't think they were going to pay him. They're not going to pay him anyway, because I think they have an abundant mindset when it comes to receivers. I think they feel like they can draft a receiver and develop him, as we're seeing with George Pickens early on, and of course the last couple of years with Chase Claypool, and of course with Johnson himself. I mean, I think they feel like they don't have to pay him what he wants, but that doesn't mean he's not worth it. So if I was his agent, I would say, look, they're probably not going to pay you, but I would keep avoiding as much risk as you can this training camp. Get your work in as much as you can. Next year, we'll take it to free agency and we'll get our money next year. Because they could say what they want in the live chat. Owen could say he's only worth $10 million, but that's baloney. Obviously, if you put his numbers up against a lot of these other guys, including Deebo Samuel, he's worth at least $20 million a year. I'm not saying the Steelers should pay him that, because I personally think that they are good at drafting receivers. They're not as perfect as good as people think, but they have a pretty decent track record. But it looks like Pickens might be the real deal, and Claypool's getting better, and you don't know with Austin. So I would move on from him if I were them, because you don't have to pay him $20 million, but it doesn't mean he's not worth it.
I want to jump in and say one thing that you brought up, and I like that you brought up Deebo Samuel. One thing that Deebo Samuel got that nobody else has been getting, and what Le'Veon Bell wanted, was he got paid some running back money too. They took in consideration the fact what he does as a runner and as a receiver. And that's something that was an issue 3 and 4 years ago, or actually now 4 and 5 years ago now, when we were talking about the Le'Veon Bell drama. So, that's something interesting to know. I agree with you that he's worth a lot of money. I almost think that these receivers right now, oh, here we go again. And I'm not talking about that. I'm just, Tony, you want to grab that for me?
Sure.
And spam a lot. So, no, wait, don't put it up.
No. I'm trying to, I can't find the thing. There it is. Right, I couldn't find it. It wasn't popping up. The three little knots weren't popping up. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Right. Can we get that off the screen though?
I'm trying.
Okay, here. I'm just gonna pick anybody to get rid of that. Okay. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, we get some unwanted spam from time to time. So this is the most I've ever heard. seeing Shannon White laugh as I'm panicking on the other end. Oh goodness gracious. See, this is what you miss when you're not in the live chat. We are not sponsored by that. I will just tell you that. Steelers Freak says the wide receiver room is stacked with depth, and the only area on the team I'm not worried about it. Yeah, and that's the thing. And Owen says DJ will be traded by week 1. Should we make a bet with Owen on that? Do you think he's traded? I don't think he is.
No, I don't think so.
The closest thing to him getting traded, I think, would be October 31st if it's just at an impasse and they can get something decent. Go ahead, Shannon.
I've just been waiting to say something about this as y'all been talking about it. First off, TJ Watt, his value above replacement player, is no comparison between the two. Nobody was going to come in, no two players, and match the production of TJ Watt. So as we said earlier, it was a done deal. DJ has 2 guys at least probably on the team that can match his production this year. We do not know what his value is to the team and Matt Canada's offense because we've never seen Matt Canada's offense. So saying, well, look what he did last year and the year before in an offense with no offensive line, with an old immobile quarterback that had to get rid of the ball in under 2 seconds, he was the only guy that could get open. That's his elite trait, is that he could get open really fast. He gets great separation. So being force-fed him the ball. He had to. He was forced to. The latter part of the year, who else did he have to throw to? Juju was hurt. Ray McLeod, who's basically needs to be a punt returner, kick returner only. Now the Steelers have options. And so I think DJ's value is less for the Steelers than it was last year for sure. Now he might be worth $20 million somewhere and in a certain offense, and that's great. But I don't think he is in Pittsburgh in Matt Canada's offense. If he is, he's got to prove it. And the only way he can start proving it is to practice and participate. So whoever his agent is giving him horrible advice.
You know what? I'm siding with Team Shannon on this. Really, I said this with Le'Veon Bell, and hey, what did we hear from Le'Veon Bell? If he had a time machine, he'd go back to 2018. We knew that agent was pushing him in the wrong direction, because there's one thing that agents are trying to tell these guys: oh, you could be the highest paid wide receiver in the game. You could be the highest paid running back in the game. You could be the highest paid this.
They want their 10%.
Yeah, because they get that 10%. But the bottom line to it is, isn't there a little bit more than that? Because 3 months later, someone else is becoming the highest paid.
Uh-huh.
Antonio Brown hated that when somebody else came along and beat it. And I hated it when somebody beat it because I knew AB was probably going to pout about it. But the thing is, when AB was on the field, AB forgot about all that garbage. And that was the great thing about him. A lot of people are talking about, some people are talking about him fading down the stretch. I could talk about some games down the stretch where he did look pretty good. That Indianapolis game that saved the Steelers the playoffs 2 days after Christmas in 2020. I mean, I thought he was phenomenal in that game. Guys, these players hit walls too. That's something that definitely happens, and you're not, even the great ones don't put up over 100 yards every single game. So no, I don't think he faded as much as some people will think.
I just think.
But go ahead, Tony.
Well, I'm sorry. I just think it's disingenuous when people say he's not a good receiver. I mean, that's just idiotic. Obviously, he is a good receiver. He just maybe he's not valuable enough to the Steelers because of their success with drafting receivers. It doesn't mean that he's not worth $20 million. The league tells us that he's worth $20 million, but he's probably not going to get that here. So when people say he's not a good receiver, that's poppycock, because he's done a great job for 3 years in a compromised offense.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing.
He was the only target.
Right. Well,
I mean, he was the
that's what-
only option. It's like a bad basketball. I mean, a good basketball player on a bad team. His
Right.
numbers are not legit because he was all they got. And that's Johnson was force fed that ball. And, and he did a good job when you consider that he was the only target.
Yeah.
There's
right.
difficulty there, especially with being old and immobile. And, so I'm not saying he's not good. I'm just saying that we
Right.
don't know what he's worth in
Right.
Matt Canada's offense right now because we've never seen it.
Yeah, I don't think he's worth $20 million here because I don't think they need to pay him that much
Mhm.
because I don't think they need him at that price. But other teams could.
If there's no
Yeah,
Chase
yeah.
Claypool, there's no George Pickens, and there's no. Well, let's just put it this way, and there's no Calvin Austin III.
Right.
Let's just say that we're looking at those three guys not being here, and you're looking at Ray McLeod. You're looking at maybe a guy like Cody White. You're looking at James Washington and DJ. You're finding a way to pay DJ.
Right.
I think you are. He's just a product of what else is on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bottom line to it. I think he is a number one wide receiver for a team. And I think he could lead a team. Remember, the last couple years were weird because his first year, he's dealing with Duck Hodges and dealing with Mason Rudolph. And it was a different situation. But he still had a good rookie season. The second year and the third year, he's dealing with a Ben Roethlisberger that is trying not to get murdered and dumping the ball off really quick in less than 2 seconds. So is he getting, somebody mentioned, Jennifer said this, and I like this, I'm going to bring Jennifer up. I like this. Jennifer's my wife's name too, so I'm partial to Jennifer's.
Mine too.
Your wife is Jennifer?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. I just feel that all the crap Steelers Nation is giving him, he's going to say, trade me and I'll show you. Hey, you know what? And that might be where they go in this. But right now, the bottom line to it is you don't want to just go rash.
Did you see what happened with James Washington today? He got his foot rolled up on at practice.
No, I did
the
not.
Cowboys, and they're afraid he's got a serious foot injury. And I hate it for the young man, but wouldn't it be something because the Packers need a receiver too, but if the Cowboys wanted to take a look, talk to the Steelers about trading for Deontay Johnson, what would the odds be of that happening?
And
but
the Cowboys are giving the Cowboys have no problem getting rid of a draft pick. We saw it with Amari Cooper. We've seen it so many times over the years. Man, that would be really interesting. And what if you get a number 2 for the guy?
Yeah,
you could squeeze a number 1 out of him possibly because he's got Pro Bowl next to his name. But there's so many things to talk about it. I just feel like that we're not giving Deontay Johnson for what he's accomplished the respect that he deserves. He came after Antonio Brown, and he also played. We're looking at some stats. Owen put up some stats, and I'm not denying those stats, but I'm also looking at the fact that no one else was tearing it up in those games too, and the quarterback has a lot to deal with it. The pressure that an immobile quarterback has a lot to do with that too. So there's a lot to look at. I'm taking 6 catches in a game from most wide receivers. I'm taking 5 catches, 34 yards. Yeah, but they're also on slants and that's I'm taking 8 when it's 8 for 31. He's getting the ball. That's a 2-yard pass. So, I really think that there's a lot to look at here. There's more than meets the eye than black and white and sucks and doesn't suck. So
right.
I just think that's something to look at here. But if we go back to the original part of this conversation, I don't think he's doing himself favors though by not getting in there. My thing is like somebody said, goes to another team and I'll show you. My thing is like, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll show you too. I'll show you right now. But here's the thing. If you look at it, everybody has the number one wide receiver, and everybody has their leading wide receiver. He's the Steelers' leading wide receiver, and I'll take him. He's a 1,000-yard wide receiver. He is a Pro Bowler. I'll take him. Now, if he leaves, you better be darn sure that somebody can go ahead and be able to fill his shoes, because don't get into a Cinderella situation here with you don't know what you got until it's gone. Right. And that's what I'm afraid that a lot of people are thinking, because these guys have not shown that they're better yet. But but DJ is not showing that, hey, I'm still the man by being in there.
Right.
Final thoughts, fellas?
You go first, Shannon.
I think if, he says he wants to stay in Pittsburgh and he wants to be a Steeler, and I believe him, he has no reason to be dishonest about that. I think if he's willing to accept 17, maybe even 18 million, I think the Steelers will talk to him. I think if he's wanting 20 plus, like a lot of people are saying, I don't think it's going to happen. But then I wonder, is he going to start practicing, or is he going to, continue to hold in and force a trade? That's what I was worried about before training camp started. And that's why I suggested maybe a trade at that point, because I didn't want it to hurt his trade value if it was obvious that he was going to, hold out. So, I think that the Steelers were considering, but the price has to be right, because we don't know what he can do in this offense.
Yeah, I think that's a guy. I mean, this is not a good comparison, but they would have never traded Josh Dobbs for that 5th round pick if they knew Ben was going to go down right after they traded him back in 2019. Now, was Josh Dobbs a savior to the team? No, but they would have definitely not dealt him, because then they put him in a situation where eventually they had a 4th option in there. So actually, I mean, do you consider that a 4th option, or do you consider that a 5th option at that point? I guess a 4th option. So, that's kind of what I'm looking at here. I just, I'm one of those guys that I don't give up on something until I'm perfectly sure that what I still have, whether it be luggage, whether it be anything, that what I still have is good enough to do the job for me. I just don't get rid of it. That's just something that I don't do. But this has been a great discussion. Tony, your final thoughts?
Well, it's been a spirited show. We've covered a lot of ground, but my thing is, and I know people, and I agree, he's not on the level of a TJ Watt or a Cam Hayward as far as what he means to the team. But I don't think they think that way. These players, I mean, they don't think, well, they don't think, well, I'm not as important as TJ Watt, so I shouldn't hold in. They think, well, my employer, my coach is letting TJ Watt or Cam Hayward hold in. Why can't I do that? So, you remember last year there was that fight between Minka and I think it was Chase Claypool.
It was Chase. And Chase.
Yeah. And what did he say to TJ Watt, apparently, according to their inside sources? You're not even, I guess TJ Watt was yelling at him. He said, well, you're not even practicing with us. You're not even a team player. So they don't look at those guys as like, oh, well, you're above us, so you can do whatever you want. We'll do whatever we want. Or we'll do what the team wants, and you guys do what you want. They think of themselves as coworkers, and our boss is letting them do that. So I'm in this, what I think is a similar situation if I'm Deontay Johnson. So why shouldn't I hold in too? So I don't know. This is a precedent that I don't know how they're ever going to, that they've set. I don't know how they're ever going to nip that in the bud in the future with future guys in similar situations.
Yeah, I don't like the hold in. I'm not a fan of the hold in. I think there's more animosity because of that. TJ had the smoke that he was able to do it. He was able to do that. I don't think it's going to work with everybody else. The final thing to say about it is I think this whole situation on whether you see a guy like this guy, Deontay Johnson, traded to another team, it all goes down to one man. I don't think it is George Pickens. I think it's Chase Claypool. I think he is the deciding factor. If he shows himself to be a number one guy, then I think that he does become a little bit more expendable. We got to go. I'm just noticing the clock. I'm going to get in trouble if I go over 1 hour. You know why? Because I'm the one that yells at everybody if they go over 1 hour. So I'm just going to say this to you boys real quick. Just when you think you got all the answers, Tony Defeo,
We keep changing the questions.
you don't have to go that fast.
That's what she said. We keep
Shannon.
changing the questions.
She's definitely saying that, isn't she? Shannon. Woo indeed. By the way, the Nature Boy, he had his last ever match. Why is my music not playing in the background? What is up with that? Hitting the button. I do not know what's going on, so I'm gonna fire myself from this music stuff. Why is that not playing? Try this one. My music's not playing for anything. All right. So with that being said, I'm Bryan, Tony, Shannon. We're out, and I'm going to do some serious editing. I'll see you later. Bye now.